In Morocco, there is one kind of bread everywhere. It's called khobz, and it's an essential staple of the Moroccan diet, eaten with nearly every meal and on every occasion. It's the bread in the basket at restaurants, and it's served with soup, tagines, and everything in between. But the thing that brought us back to Fez after 5 years away is not only how that bread is made, but where it is baked. It's baked in communal ovens, where people bring their dough to the master baker to have it cooked in the massive wood-fired oven. We were taken by this unique cultural tradition 5 years ago, and now we've returned to explore these ovens, meet the people behind the ubiquitous Moroccan bread loaves, and learn how to whip up a batch of khobz ourselves. Welcome to part 2 of our 3-part baking series. In part 1, we met the Spanish nuns that bake cookies to keep their convents going. Now we're in Fez to explore khobz and communal ovens. Then in part 3, we depart for the French Riviera, where we dive deep into the French obsession with baguettes to learn how the capital of bread creates one of the most famous breads in the world.
What's the best way to eat a baguette? How do you like to eat your baguette?
Which one's your favorite between these? This one or this one? What was your absolute favorite?
This one.
This one.
Like, subscribe, and sit back to enjoy this globe-trotting foodie adventure. Here we go. After a quick breakfast in our dar, a beautiful traditional Moroccan house, we leapt into the Medina with some pep in our step, with our girls excited to learn about the Moroccan bread. We soon met up with our local expert Idris, who we had met in 2020 and who'd first introduced us to the communal bakeries of Fez.
These are our girls! They weren't born last time we saw you! It's great to see you, Idris! Oh my.
He was very excited that we'd returned with some children, as many men in Arabic cultures celebrate a growing family, and it was really nice to see a familiar face in a place that often feels so chaotic and intimidating. The Fez Medina is made up of nearly 10,000 different streets that wind like a maze. We traveled through the web of streets with Idris until we finally came upon our first communal oven and ducked our heads to enter. This is where we met our first baker, Mohammed, who would become a key figure of this story. Now here's the thing about these bakeries, they're private businesses. They're not publicly owned, even though everyone uses them. And they're not really a tourist attraction, so these people were incredible to let us in so warmly to their place of work. We watched Mohammed work like an artist. He begins at 4 a.m. every day to start building the fires. The fires that power these ovens blaze all day and naturally put off a lot of heat. Locals don't want to unnecessarily heat their homes during the warmer months, so they take not just their bread, but their vegetables, tagines, and even sweets to the communal ovens instead. Mohammed and one other man work in the early morning hours, making between 600 and 1,000 khobz for various bakeries, restaurants, and hotels. Khobz is the Arabic word for bread, but in Morocco it is shorthand for these specific circular loaves found all over. Within minutes, Mohammed had the girls involved, helping fork in some fresh dough to the ovens, and then shortly after, his baking partner brought us into the back room to show us where they'd put together the khobz. This was way more than we had bargained for, as we were really hoping Idris could just show us a couple of ovens and maybe introduce us to a baker so that we could come back the next day with our own dough. But they were letting us knead some dough and really showing us their entire process. As we finished working the dough and saw it get rolled out, they mentioned that the khobz is made with a specifically curated yeast starter that the local women use to start each new batch.
This is traditional yeast. It's not chemical. We make it like themselves. We put the dough until it's
Can you buy that in the Medina?
No, it needs a long time to be made.
Oh, it's like a starter. Yeah. Oh, I understand. Okay. Oh, very cool.
They said it was something we really couldn't get in a store, and so we asked if they might be able to get us some, and they graciously agreed. They told us to come back in 2 hours to pick it up. Around 11 a.m., the commercial orders have been fulfilled, and the women from the neighborhood start bringing in their family loaves to be baked for lunch. So, on oven stop number 1, we'd already made friends with a master baker to whom we planned to return the following day with our own doughy khobz ready for him to bake. Fast forward 2 hours to some rug shop in the Medina, and someone shows up at the door with a little jar of yeast to drop it off for us. They met us where we were, and they asked for nothing in return. These people were truly so kind to us. So we had our yeast, which meant we only needed one other simple ingredient, a bit of flour. We picked some up in the souk. This specific flour has some unground wheat pieces in it. It's used for khobz because it gives some additional texture to the bread. We also picked up a bag of fava beans, but these weren't for the bread. Khobz is always eaten with something, a tagine with meat or with the extremely popular soup called Bessara. In 2020, we were overly cautious eaters when traveling, and we had shirked Idris's offer to try some.
Come on, try. Oh,
We're so close.
But this time we sat down at a local joint to taste some of this fava bean soup and ask a couple of questions about how it's prepared. It's a super simple soup made with just fava beans, olive oil, cumin, paprika, and salt, and usually finished generously with olive oil.
There you go. Alright, that's enough.
It's good. I like it. It's very filling. It's a good like winter soup too. I'm curious if they eat this year round.
It pairs perfectly with Khobz, and so we decided to make it alongside our dough the next day. We wanted to try it for ourselves, and we just bought the beans to make it tomorrow, so that when we go and we bake our bread, we can also make the soup to go along with it. It'll be the match made in heaven. Back in our dar the following morning, it was time to whip up our dough.
I wasn't allowed to do the chant.
Let's make some bread. Let's make some bread.
We're gonna make some Khobz.
Hopes.
Khobz.
Hopes.
Khobz.
Hopes.
Making the dough was fairly easy, especially since our friends at the ovens had given us a live starter.
Kind of exploded.
We got our ingredients all laid out: flour, sugar, salt, and our starter, and we were on our way. This whole bread endeavor has really just been an excuse for our girls to get their hands dirty in the kitchen, and they loved every second of the sticky kneading process.
She looks so cute and bad. She looks like a baby bagel.
Once everything was combined and lightly kneaded, we covered it with plastic wrap and sat it next to the heater to prove and rise for about 15 minutes. We'd later find out that we might have messed up the process because we combined our starter with some water, which was probably not necessary and showed our naivete with making bread. The consequence was a diluted rising agent that would leave our loaves a bit dense. Now that our dough was rising, we had to throw together our Bessara so that it'd be ready to eat with our bread when we returned from the ovens. The soup is so incredibly simple and surprisingly delicious. You get some fava beans boiling until they're tender, add in some paprika, cumin, and olive oil, then whip it together with a whisk until it looks like a soup. That was it. Our dough was gathered, rested, and risen, and our Bessara was boiled, mashed, and ready to serve. All that was left was to venture out into the Medina and get our dough baked by the master, Mohammed. The Medina is very confusing without a guide. We had dropped the geopen when we were at the oven the previous day and attempted to navigate to it, but that did not go well. Fortunately, the kind people of Fez saw some foreign girls with unbaked dough and knew to direct us to the ovens.
He actually helped us.
Yeah, he did. He did.
Oh my gosh, like totally lost. We would have never gone down here.
Our new Moroccan friends were busy at work, but quickly they began assisting us with throwing some finishing flour onto our overly wet dough. And that little bit of finishing flour turned into the guy picking up our clearly poorly constructed dough and giving it the CPR that it needed to survive in the ovens.
We brought our bread in, and he immediately looked at it and went, oh, no, we gotta rework this thing. I thought we just had to maybe sprinkle some flour. He completely reworked it, made it into perfectly little shaped balls, and now it's resting in there for about 15 minutes. We have 5 left, and we're gonna bake it.
He got our dough whipped back into shape and said we could return in 15 minutes to have it baked. We returned and then waited eagerly while it was shoveled into the oven for 5 to 10 minutes to bake.
Are you excited?
Yes.
It was rotated multiple times throughout the process, and Mohammed was clearly giving it a little bit of extra love and attention.
Toasty.
Our bakers kindly and eagerly told us goodbye in a string of a foreign language that we could not understand. But from what we gleaned, they were happy we had come and grateful to have helped 3 American girls partake in their life's work. They threw in a couple of their Khobz as they had correctly worried that ours had turned out a little too dense. It was actually pretty funny walking back from the ovens because all of the men and women that we had passed on the way there who were staring at our foreign family walking through with this tray of unbaked dough were now giving us nods of respect as we returned with some successfully baked Moroccan bread. I think Taylor definitely had earned some street credit with some of the neighborhood women for successfully bringing her family back some bread for lunch. We got back into our dar, got our bread to the dining table, then went to serve our Bessara, which had been waiting patiently for us. Then we all sat down together to enjoy our loaves. I want to
Bread
try
first, right?
our bread first.
Alright. Oh man.
Oh, it's a little thin. It's a little. Oh.
Oh no,
very, very kindly decided to throw in a couple of their cooked bread yams, and he took pity on our loaves right there at the end, realizing they were kind of dense. So.
Can you tell which ones are ours? How is it? Moment of truth.
Yours.
These look very different. Texturally, whenever you're chewing them, I don't know. I mean, they don't taste that different. Honestly, flavor-wise, they're more different because like you said, this one is more of like a pure wheat or some sort of a blend that we got in the Medina yesterday versus this looks like more like an actual white flour.
Daddy, it doesn't taste
How's it, sorry?
like the other one.
You dip it in there?
Yeah.
It doesn't taste like the other one?
No.
I actually think the flavor is spot on. I just think it's a little dense.
But with the Bessara, much better.
All right, comparison. Oh my god.
Yeah.
Whoa,
Ours.
man.
Theirs. Returning to Fez after 5 years and more deeply exploring this story was a realized dream for us. We were fascinated by a community coming together at a few centralized places for cooking their daily bread. But coming to fully experience it in person, and with our daughters, exceeded our expectations. The bakers took us in with open arms and allowed us to be locals in the Fez community for a couple of days. We're grateful to Idris for introducing us to the topic in the first place, and to Mohammed and his counterparts for spending so much time with us during their busy days to let us peer into their way of life and get our pitiful loaves baked. We felt so welcomed that we will surely return again in another 5 years, hopefully to our neighborhood oven for some fresh Khobz. Coming soon, we head to Côte d'Azur in southern France for part 3 of this baking series to discover the French obsession with baguettes. Subscribe to learn about 3 different kinds of French baguette, 3 different methods for making a baguette, and the plentiful ways in which they are enjoyed by the French every day, for every meal, even a dessert. Thanks for watching.
I have mine in my bike.
I like that a lot.